Hi, Kursad. Thank you so much for a wonderful grade one exam submission. It was really quite wonderful to work through this particular exam because I think you're doing really, really well. It shows me that you're reconnecting with the guitar, especially after such a long break. Thank you for your self assessment, by the way. You're doing a fantastic job. So, all of the tools that you built up in your youth have come back pretty quickly, and it seems like you're doing a really great job. I was especially impressed with the repertoire. I thought it was consistent, accurate, great sound, very musical. It was a high quality, so a really wonderful job. There are a couple of things that I want to touch on in the practice routine. This will be a pretty short video because I think you do have all of the tools you need to move on to grade two, and you'll do quite well there, I think. So I just want to touch on a couple of things in the practice routine, but first I do want to just kind of enjoy this wonderful repertoire performance. So beautiful scale run there, especially at this tempo. It's quite fast, I would say, and yet you handle it effortlessly. It's very smooth. There's a lot of fluidity in your playing, so that scale is very smooth. There's no hiccup. There are no hiccups that happen, which is pretty can happen frequently for beginning guitarists, and you don't exhibit that at all. So I think you have a lot of control. Your right hand alternation is consistent all the way throughout both the repertoire and the practice routine. So excellent job. The only thing I would point out here. The left hand looks pretty good in this position. In first position, it's okay to turn a little bit perhaps, depending on what we're playing to the left, but I did notice your hand turns more to the left in the practice routine. We'll talk about that in a moment. Really nice dynamics all the way throughout. Beautiful rubato at the end of that phrase. And I would also say nice efficient motions in the right hand. And again, a beautiful end to the phrase at the end of that piece. So overall, I think you've reached a high level of achievement with these particular repertoire pieces. I do want to just touch on the sitting position. You mentioned that this is one of your struggles. You said, in terms of challenges, sustaining the right sitting position and your right shoulder ache. I'm not sure where all of that comes from. There are several things that could be at stake here, but I will note that in this particular video, it does look like your left shoulder is maybe hunched down a little bit. And I know the guitar is kind of pushed out away from you quite a bit like this. It's angled outward like this quite a bit. And that might be so you can see your left hand better. Since I'm going to touch on the left hand in the practice routine, I will say I think it would be better for you to allow the bottom of the guitar to come toward your body a little more so that the face of the guitar is not parallel, but a little bit more parallel to your body, to your torso than it is now. So less this angle and more like this. Again, not straight up and down where you can't see your left hand at all, but just a slightly less steep angle away from your body. And the guitar is positioned sort of right in the middle of your chest. You could allow it to come a little bit more to the left, but I think the reason I point this out is your left shoulder does look like it's dipping down a bit, and that could mean that your right shoulder is up above your left shoulder as a result. And that could cause some pain, some ache. So most importantly, I think, is to get in a good position before you even bring the guitar to the chair, so that you're sitting in a position where your spine is straight, aligned with your sit bones on your pelvis, and that your shoulders are aligned nice and straight. And then you bring the guitar to you, and you shouldn't have to change your sitting position to accommodate the guitar. In other words, the guitar comes to you. You shouldn't have to come to the guitar. So that's the one thing that I would note here before we move on here to the practice routine. Now, excellent alternation. The only thing in terms of the right hand that I think could use just a slight adjustment is, and this comes through really clearly in the scales. When you allow the thumb to rest on the sixth string, there's quite a big stretch in the hand that happens, especially from the sixth string to the first string. And so if we go back here to the position of your right hand in the repertoire, nice and relaxed, and here it's very open. And I would say that the hand tends to rest back a little bit toward the thumb, and you might instead allow the fingers to stay in the position as if the thumb was right here, and then reach back with the thumb, rather than putting the thumb down and reaching the fingers out, which I think displaces the hand just a little bit too much. It's a nuanced point, a little bit of nitpicking perhaps, just something I noticed. But overall, really good alternation, good string crossing. You do have a tendency to go in a line with the hand, and that means that by the time you do get to the first string, your right hand wrist does turn a little bit. Here we see a really good position, nice straight line from the knuckle all the way back to the elbow, but here and in the scales in particular, the wrist does turn a little bit to the right. So what I would encourage you to do is to follow a diagonal line with the fingers, moving from here to here, instead of a straight line down like this when you're crossing strings. So not opening the hand up and turning the wrist, but instead keeping that same hand position all the way across the strings and back. So we want to keep this as sort of a unit that moves with the arm rather than the hand or the fingers outreaching. Okay, so moving on to the left hand walking. Now, right there, I'm going to pause because what we can see is a good left hand position. The wrist could be sticking out a bit, it's hard to tell, but I think it's pretty straight. It's not kind of turned to the left or the right. But what we will notice is that the fourth finger right here is very straight. So it touches the string flat on this part of the finger. I'd really like you to start getting in the habit of putting this part of the finger down, the fingertip, even on the sixth string. But that's especially apparent when we get to the treble string. So I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit. Fourth finger looks a little, no, it's pretty straight there still. So it looks like it's curled as it approaches, and then it flattens out when it goes down on the string. But then here on the trebles, watch what happens here between the first and the second finger as they start to curl in that violin position, so to speak. And then here, the finger goes down flat, the pinky finger, sorry, the little finger, and your other fingers are turned in this left direction, the violin direction. So here, you can even see the wrist is here. So if we go back, you can see that the wrist is there, and now it's out here. So the wrist is actually moved to accommodate the fingers turning in that direction. So we really need the wrist to stay in. It's the same kind of principle as the right hand. The right hand stays still as we cross strings. It doesn't need to turn this way or this way, or go up and down. Instead, we keep that same hand position, whether we're playing with thumb or fingers, both thumb and fingers. Same thing here. We want the wrist to stay the same as we're changing strings. So we need to allow the wrist to come nice and square and relaxed, not popping out, but nice and relaxed. And then up on the fingertips with every finger, especially the pinky finger for you. So I would say one exercise you might continue with is the descending portion of this left hand walking, which is just, and you might work on just aligning the hand and return to that fundamentals left hand position video from Simon's fundamentals course, because he goes through a lot of different things I think that will be really useful for you in terms of alignment of the left hand. I'm going to skip it through the arpeggios. I thought those were good. One thing here on the happy couples. Good dynamics. Good finger movement. The only thing is sometimes, very rarely, I do hear a little bit of splitting of notes. Just a little bit. Where the first finger comes back into the hand just slightly before the M finger, or sorry, the I finger comes back just slightly before the M finger. One thing that you can do to avoid that is to kind of close the gap between these two fingers. So instead of allowing air between them, bring them together so they're touching and they move as one unit as they come back into the hand. Again, that's a small kind of nitpicking point. Moving on to the scales, we see the left hand issues that I already discussed, but here it's even more apparent, the turning of the right hand wrist. So here, I can't see the wrist because it's covered up by your shirt here, but it does look like the wrist is turned to the right slightly. And we can go back to here, and you can see a different position of the wrist from there to there. It's turned, again, to the right. So I'd like you to work on allowing the wrist to stay nice and relaxed and to move diagonally as you cross strings rather than moving to the right and turning the wrist. The other thing I noticed, very small thing, but is that your normal position with the right hand is over here in what I would call the Ponticello region. So instead, I'd like you to move just a little bit more to the left with your normal sound. You get a great tone, but in general, you're like here on the waltz, you're a little bit bright. And you could get a warmer sound by coming more closer to the sound hole so that your thumb is inside the sound hole and your fingers are right on the edge. Instead of, you'll notice there's a big difference in the sound, just that small motion, quite a bit brighter there than here. So I'd like you to get in the habit of making your normal position a little bit more to the left than you're currently doing. Otherwise, you have done a fantastic job with the submission. You definitely have all the tools you need to move forward into grade 2, and I think you'll do quite well in grade 2. So just a few minor adjustments, especially with the left hand. That would be my main focus. Some things in the right hand, but mostly to do with realignment of the left hand. So congratulations on an excellent grade 1 exam submission. I would like to award you the certificate and welcome to grade 2. Thanks, Kursad.